First of all, congratulations and welcome to Canada if you are an international student. You've worked so hard to get to this stage and I wish you continued success on your journey. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can file your taxes as an international student. Let's face it, you have many things on the go. You have to figure out your exams, your assignments, keeping a roof over your head, scraping together enough money to pay for it all. The last thing you want to worry about is taxes, and that's the goal of this video. Give you all the tips and tricks you need so you can easily file your taxes as an international student and get some free money from the government. The deadline to file your taxes is usually April 30th of each year. Now you can file early as February. You want to ensure that you file on time and way ahead of the deadline, because if you go past the deadline, you may face interest and or penalties. And let's face it, when you are a student or an international student, there's not a lot of money to go around. The last thing you want to do is face additional interest and penalties. That's straight money out of your pocket. So here are some key dates to remember. January 1st is the start of the new tax year. February 24th is when e-file opens. This means that residents and immigrants can now start filing their taxes. February 28th, this is the last day for employers to issue T4s, T4As, and T5s to employees. And if you don't know what a T4, T4A, or T5 slip is, I'm going to cover that later in this video. So don't worry. April 30th, just like we talked about, this is a date that is one of the most important dates, as is the filing deadline for your tax return and the deadline to pay any owed balance to the CRA. Now, if April 30th falls on the weekend, like a Saturday or the Sunday, the date is usually extended to the following Monday. How do you file your tax return? Well, there are two key main ways to file. One is electronic, online, and the other is through a paper tax return. Now, it's highly recommended you do take the electronic approach, as it's so much easier, faster, and a lot more secure than filing through the paper approach. You can use one of the certified tax softwares listed on the Canada Revenue Agency website, so you can file easily, electronically, and safely. And some of these products are listed on the CRA website, are free or at low cost for students. And if you have registered for direct deposit, once you file your tax return, the CRA has done assessing it, your refund will show up in your bank account directly. Now, paper filing, on the other hand, this is a lot more time consuming and requires a lot more documentation, and I do not recommend this approach just because it's so cumbersome and it takes so much time. But I will still talk about it in case you want to take this path for whatever reason. You can download and print the income tax and benefit package from the CRA website or order a copy by phone. You will then need to fill out all the forms manually and attach all the required documents such as your income slips, your receipts, and identification. Then you need to go and mail this to the CRA before the deadline, which is usually April 30th. But as you can see, this is going to take a lot more longer, and you have to be a lot more meticulous if you want to take that paper approach. And that's why it's just, not recommended, because you can honestly file through an app on your phone. It's just quicker, easier, and faster. And honestly speaking, even the CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency, wants you to file your taxes electronically because it's also easier for them to process, and it just makes the process easier for everybody involved. Before you start filing your taxes, it's super important that you determine your tax residency status. This will have an impact on how much tax you have to pay and what deductions and credits you can actually claim. There are four main types of residency status for tax purposes. 1 is a resident, 2, non-resident, 3, deemed resident, and 4, deemed non-resident. Now, at this point, you might be thinking this is starting to get really complicated, and this might put you off on filing your tax return. But I promise you, we're going to break this down. We're going to simplify it so it's no longer a big, daunting, scary task. Tax filing is not as complicated as it seems. It can be super simple. You just have to follow a few approaches and a few steps along the way. So first, let's talk about what a resident means. A resident, this means you have significant residential ties in Canada, such as a home, a spouse, or dependent. Other residential ties include that you have bank accounts in Canada, you have credit cards in Canada, you have a driver's license, or you have a health card from a province or territory in Canada. And if you fall into this category, that means you have to report all of your worldwide income and potentially pay tax on it. That means if you make money in Canada, you have to report that. And if you're still making money from back home, you have to include that income as well. The next one is non-resident, and that means you have no residential ties in Canada and you stay here for less than 183 days out of the calendar year. If you fall into this category, that means you only have to report your Canadian source income and pay tax on it. So let's say, as an example, you're an international student and you're only studying here in Canada one semester a year, and you only end up staying in Canada for about 120 days a year, and the rest of the time you are back home. That means you only have to report the income you made in Canada on your tax return. The money that you made in Canada, this is what's known as Canadian sourced income. Deemed resident, this is very similar to the first category we just talked about, being a resident. Even if you have no residential ties to Canada, such as a bank account, a spouse, or whatever it may be that was on the list we just talked about, if you've stayed here for more than 183 days out of the calendar year, for tax purposes, you are now deemed to be a resident. If you fall into this category, you have to report your worldwide income, where you can also claim tax deductions and tax credits, just like regular residents. And it's very critical you keep a detailed log of the number of days you spent in Canada and the number of days you spent outside of Canada, because this has such a huge impact on how and how much taxes you have to pay. So make sure to keep a detailed log on the number of days you are in Canada and the number of days you are outside of Canada. It will come in super handy when you do your taxes. The last category is deemed non-resident. That means you have ties to both Canada and another country that actually has a tax treaty with Canada. And if you fall into this category, that means you have to report your Canadian source income and you cannot claim most tax deductions or tax credits. Now, an important highlight over here, most international students completing a degree in Canada on a study permit are generally considered to be residents of Canada for tax purposes. This is the first category that we talked about. Being a resident for tax purposes as an international student, this situation applies to probably 80 to 90% of you watching this video. However, your own situation, your own unique circumstances will actually determine what your residential tie to Canada is. And that's why it's so important that you take a hard look at what your ties to Canada are and determine your tax residency status before you file. And to help you do that, one of the best ways is to keep track of the days you spend in Canada and outside of Canada. And if you're still not sure what your tax residency status is, the CRA has you covered. Find out which residency status applies to you. You can use the online form shown here on the CRA website or contact them by phone or email. Another thing you should determine before you start filing your taxes in Canada is your unique identification number from the CRA. There are two main types of unique ID numbers. One is your SIN number or the social insurance number. Two is the ITN number, which is the individual tax number. Again, this may sound complicated, but let's break it down and let's simplify. First off is the SIN number. This is a 9-digit number that allows you to work legally in Canada and access government benefits and services. If you have a SIN number, this is what you're going to use when you file your tax return. Now, the ITN number, on the other hand, is also a 9-digit number, but it is only used for tax purposes if you do not have a SIN number. To get an ITN number, you need to complete Form T1261 and mail it along with your certified copies of ID documents such as your passport or your study permit. We've already covered the fact that there are two critical pieces of information that you need to know before you start filing. One was your SIN or ITN number. Two was your tax residency status. Now let's talk about the other documents you need that you can actually use to start preparing your tax return. First off is the income slip, also known as a T4. If you've done full-time work or part-time work for any employer, they will issue you a slip that summarizes the income you've earned, that summarizes the taxes you paid on that income. This is known as a T4 slip. The other slip you may have received is called a T4A slip. This is income from scholarship, from bursaries, or other awards and prizes that you've received related to your studies. If you've worked for your university or college during the calendar year, you can access your T4 online through your university website, which is also where you will get your T4A. And if you're not sure where any of this information may be coming from or where this information may be, I highly recommend checking out the website of your university or college and go to the tax document section for further instructions on how you can access this information. So far, we've checked off the T4 and the T4A. Now, if you have a bank account in Canada, such as a checking account, such as a savings account, you're likely receiving some interest on the money that you have in those accounts. And that interest you earned is also income, and you're going to receive a tax slip that summarizes that interest income. Interest and investment tax slips are known as a T3 or a T5, and they're received from your financial institution. The best way is to contact your financial institution for a copy of your T3 or T5 slip if the situation applies to you. If you've invested in stocks or ETFs, you may have received interest income or dividend income. If this income was in a taxable account, you are very likely to receive a T3 or a T5 slip. If you're not sure if any of this information applies to you, whether you have received interest, whether you have received dividends, or whether you even have a taxable account, contact your financial institution and they can guide you further. But at least now you have some context on what type of questions to ask them. As an international student, there is one tax slip that is very likely you'll need to file your taxes, and this is called a T2202A. And this slip essentially identifies the number of months you attended your university or college and how much tuition you paid. You can very likely find this slip on the student portal of your university or college website. check around the finance or tax receipts section. The tax documents we just talked about are the most likely applicable to your situation. We covered off the T4, the T4A, the T2202A, and a T3 or T5 slip if you received interest or investment income. Let's go through some of the other tax slips you may have received. Again, this is still very based on your own unique personal situation. Let's summarize the possible categories. Other tax slips you may have, which include donation receipts if you made a donation to a Canadian registered charity, medical receipts for any out-of-pocket medical expenses, rent receipts from your landlord, any letters from the CRA if you have previously filed your taxes, including past notice of assessments. We've covered a lot of ground so far by talking about the things you need before you start filing, the things you need in order to file your tax return. Now let's actually talk about how to file your tax return once you have all this information. Once you have determined your tax residency status and have obtained your unique identification number from the CRA, you are now ready to file your taxes online. And you can watch my step-by-step video tutorial where I show you exactly how you can file online for free every single step of the way. I will leave a link to this video in the description so you can check it out and start filing a tax return as soon as you stop watching this. And if you did Uber or DoorDash or Instacart or Lyft or any of these type of services, then I highly recommend watching this video so you can understand how to file your taxes with your side hustle. Once you have submitted and filed your tax return, you will receive a response from the CRA. This is called a notice of assessment. And once this is received and once this is finalized, your tax refund will show up in your bank account either through a direct deposit or through a check in the mail based on what you signed up for. And any correspondence you receive from the CRA, any letters you receive from them, make sure you keep them in a safe place for your records. I know it may seem like a lot of work and it may seem like a complicated process. That's why you maybe put it off in the past, because you have to figure out 1, how to file taxes. 2, you have to figure out what documents you need in order to file your taxes. 3, figure out which tax software to use, which is the best tax software to use in order to file your taxes. Now, points 1 or 2 on how to file your taxes and what documents you need, we've already covered in this video, so you should be good. Number 3, what software to use. I have a separate video that details exactly what software you need to use, how to use that software from a blank slate all the way to a final product so you can submit your tax return. It is a step-by-step tutorial video, and I highly recommend you watch this video right after you finish watching this one. So that means we've already covered either in this video or my other videos on everything you need to know to file your taxes and make this a seamless and easy process. Believe it or not, there are some real benefits to filing your taxes online, so you don't want to put this off. Let's talk about exactly that topic. Let's talk about the real benefits of why you should file your taxes. This one is going to be pretty straightforward, and one of the main reasons you want to file is because you may be eligible for tax credits and refunds that can either lower your tax bill or increase your tax refund. The most common expenses that students can claim as non-refundable tax credits are tuition fees, medical expenses, interest paid on student loans, and donations. Some of the other benefits and tax credits you can apply for after you file is a GST HST credit or the Canada Child Benefit if you have a spouse or children. The GST HST credit is a quarterly payment that helps individuals and families with low or modest incomes offset all or part of the GST HST you pay on goods and services. And the Canada Child Benefit is a monthly payment that helps eligible families with the cost of raising children under the age of 18. If you want to learn more about this amazing tax benefit that is tax-free and pays you monthly, the Canada Child Benefit, I highly recommend watching this video so you can learn even more about this amazing tax benefit. One of the other major benefits of filing a tax return every year and on time, and this is a benefit that most people don't think about, is that sometimes you need to prove your income. You need to prove what you make, and you may need this proof. Things like applying for a visa, applying for a scholarship, or applying for a loan. Your tax return is a validation, and you can obtain this official document called the Notice of Assessment that shows what your income and tax situation is. At the end of the day, the government is holding on to free money for you. It is your money, so all you have to do is file your taxes in order to claim this free money, and it is rightfully yours. And if you need help filing your taxes or are not sure what to do, there are several resources available to you that you can access. One is the Community Volunteer Income Tax Program. This is a free service offered by volunteers who can help low-income individuals with simple tax situations file their tax return online or on paper. Number 2 is the International Student Services Offices. This is an office available at most universities that provides support and guidance for international students on how to file your taxes and other various tax issues. And last but not least is the CRA website itself. This is where you can find all the information and tools related to tax questions in Canada, such as various tax forms, tax guides, tax videos, and an FAQ. If you're a member of this channel, you can also ask me any questions you may have. I have a whole library of videos that you can access for free to learn more about taxes, real estate, investing, and all those personal finance related topics. I would honestly love to be able to answer every single one of those questions. Unfortunately, there just isn't enough time to go around. So this helps me answer the most critical and urgent questions, the ones that are asked by members. I will leave a link in the description so you can sign up for membership if you haven't already. It costs less than a coffee, and it's a way to even support the channel so I can keep bringing you this great free content. I hope this video was helpful and you found it informative on how to file your taxes as an international student. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and hit that thanks button on the bottom of this video. And if you know of people, if you know of friends that could be in a similar situations of yours and they're unsure about the taxes, make sure you share this video to them so they also can claim their free money and file their taxes. I also have exclusive offers for you to check out in the description of this video for products and services that I use on a daily basis. You can get some amazing discounts and sign-up bonuses, so be sure to check that out. You might find something you like. Again, links to everything I've talked about are in the description of this video. That's it for now, and I'll talk to you in the comment section.